Okay, the clock is chiming 12 at Union Square, and that means Rabbit Hole Central TV is going to bring you an episode. Let me see if I can. I have the camera set a little bit differently because Nico Haupt was doing a show with Madhouse Radio. And what that is a group of people who are professional about making crank calls. Now, unfortunately, the event has had to be canceled tonight at the Arts Club because my charity is lacking in a letter of determination from the IRS. My charity was created 12 years ago, and it's so old that the original lawyer who did it no longer has a copy handy. He has to go into storage, and it's so difficult he won't do it, so I have to go back to the IRS, and that takes about 90 days. I actually had to do this procedure for Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and I'm about 45 days into an estimated 90-day process. So we're going to have to stand by. There will be something done outside of the National Arts Club for about an hour with AQ AlQyeda, who is also known as the artist Duffy. And it's really beautiful what he's going to be handing out and hopefully getting some donations for his work. And what he's talking about is the nature of, ending terrorism by really understanding what's going on. And he's handing out about 100 of these. Visual language translator for IED detection. So it's calling to our attention the vast technological, I don't know if you'd call them breakthroughs. It's hard to imagine something that hurts humanity as a breakthrough, but I guess a breakthrough for destruction. He goes, be aware, not a target. And he's handing stuff like this out. It says terrorists, AQ AlQyeda. And this is part of the new creationism that starts to call to people's awareness what's really going on in the world. Now, what I also want to say is it appears that the appearance on Howard Stern was very useful to them. The ratings, they say that when I was on with my all-star cast, Nico Hitler, AQ AlQyeda, Rhinary Economics, Alan Steinfeld is sort of the straight guy that was representing the official version of 9/11. And then, of course, Web Fairy, who was probably the least comfortable with the show because she requires a little more space. She does meticulous work. She was one of the first people 7 years ago to see that there was no airplane in the first strike. And she and Nico Haupt had for 7 years been friends over the internet, and they finally met here. The nature of the kind of attention span that you have on a production like Howard Stern is rather limited. That, in addition to the fact that none of the calls were authentic, and they were signaling to their regular viewers because they said, I lost somebody in the World Trade Center, and then they would cite someone who works on staff and is known to work on staff by the viewers of Howard Stern. Now, I know by going into the hardware store, people recognize my voice, so even though Nico Haupt kind of questions some of the ratings and the reach and the viewership, of course, with satellite, we don't have that much familiarity. As far as the internet, we're working almost round the clock in just keeping track of what's happening as this creationism, performance art that's documented and then posted on the internet, as that evolves. We watch how certain people don't yet understand that including all would make it a better world, and therefore they try to suppress evidence of malfeasance against the social order. Everyone knows that a lot of times we don't live up to the noblest ideals which we've been exposed to in our society, in our culture. But sometimes it starts to degenerate to such a degree that things get so out of hand that you have layers and layers and layers of lies and misinformation, and an unwillingness, even when we say we want the knowledge, really to be responsible for the knowledge as it starts to come to us, and then we sort of backstep and we become comfortable and don't want to look beyond what the society says is acceptable and what will make us acceptable in the eyes of our fellow social members. But throughout the ages, very great people have questioned. Oh dear, what's happened? Sometimes the electricity gets sort of joggled and it goes off. Throughout the ages, there have been great people who have questioned the social norm, and oftentimes when the social norm gets itself into trouble, where you're facing like endless war or a prison system that, you know, the only way you can keep the societies in order is through bullies using the prisons to keep at bay those that might question their bullying ways. These great individuals have demonstrated a command of the source of life, the source of, you know, all the social order, but going beyond what most people say the rules and regulations are. They go beyond the rules, beyond the regulations. And that's why even the great holy books, when considered by these great masters, become rather irrelevant. Now, if somebody wants to encounter such a great soul and they say they want the knowledge, just coming forward and saying that you want the knowledge, you're entitled to test and to question who you are asking this knowledge for. Because if they can't meet your tests and your questions, then it's known that they're not... Oh, why does this keep happening? Anyway, if somebody can't pass the tests, and then you also have to have a teacher that tells you how to lay out the tests so that you know what to ask for, then you don't want to surrender and to go against your instincts in order to embrace a higher truth. Now, the instincts are what you acquire. Let's say social instincts for survival. But if you start looking around and you see that the society as a whole isn't surviving, you've got endless war going on, or those who are part of the so-called health care are not very healthy, and they even seem that they would have been better off if they hadn't involved themselves with the so-called health care. For example, my own father took Lupron, and I understand today from someone who also took it that it's now off the market. It has so much litigation against it. Well, this is a very painful realization for me. It's something that I suspected a long time ago. It's something that grieved me a lot because I went to India to learn how Jesus did the healings, and then I find in the 4 years I'm gone, I'm losing so much time at home that I'm not around, that maybe I could have, you know, helped my father think of some different alternatives, even though according to his allegiance to the social order, his health care, his insurance, and the doctors that the health care and insurance were providing was something he believed in. So it's very tricky to take somebody's belief away before you replace it with something, even if it's something greater. There's going to be that in-between phase where there'll be this shaky level of confidence. So right now, because of being on the Howard Stern show, it looks like Les Jamieson at St. Mark's Church is having grave misgivings, because the kind of attention that we got from from Howard Stern is such that if you want to be respectable and you want 9/11 truth to be considered respectable, you're saying this isn't happening. Now, I am saying right now the reinvestigation and punishment never works is a big concern for me. You have to investigate so you know, even if you're going to go the path of forgiveness, you have to know who you're forgiving and what you're forgiving them for. So my difference with Les Jamieson is he wants to reinvestigate 9/11. My concern is that who's doing the reinvestigation? And I'm saying, look at the death of Dan Wallace, that I'm feeling is a murder. And if you don't understand how that murder came about, how that death came about, whoever investigated that, if they're at the helm of the new investigation, what good is it going to do? Now people say, oh, Paula, you're saying Luke Rudowski and the We Are Change or Sabrina killed Dan Wallace. I'm not saying that. As a matter of fact, there's 3 people that I hold accountable for the death of Dan Wallace. 2 of them did the research that started to show that people were waking up. That would be Nico Haupt and Ryan Rodriguez. I used to think it was all Nico's work, but I found out recently it was Ryan Rodriguez who did a lot of searching around on the internet and came up with the knowledge that a lot of the spiritual groups were actually controlled, funded by something higher that had to do with manipulating social focus, social manipulation. And Nico, in his lack of skills with nonviolent communication, I feel fell down on the job in approaching Les Jamieson with this information. And so there's this tendency when it comes to murder and death and murder, that you point the fingers and you say somebody else did it. If we're talking about a crime of 3,000 people at the World Trade Center, and the media comes up right away with who's likely to be Osama bin Laden, and even though there's 5 different Osama bin Ladens, and you can see clearly in the footage, sometimes he's thin, sometimes he's fat, sometimes you see evidence that he's following his religious dictates, and others, because of where he's wearing a ring or how he's eating or whatever, that he's not following his dictates, and then the TV fakery, also points to that this is not, it's not what we think it is. But somebody did it. Nobody's denying. They're not into 9/11 denial. They're saying that the towers are still there. You're just not seeing them. Nobody's saying that. So someone did this murder, and how did it happen? How did it escalate? So when Nico would rant and rave about the various war criminals, I'm sure that when people are doing their particular jobs, their particular dharma, following the social order, they think it's correct. I'm sure Stephen Jones, when he stopped cold fusion, felt that that was correct. But if it leads eventually to a dependency on oil when you could be independent of oil, then that's very dangerous. But did he know it at the time? Rabbit Hole Central. Hello? Hello? So in the same way, I'm saying, if you're saying that Les Jamieson is a war criminal, or he's creating a crime because of the death of Dan Wallace, and if you knew he was influenced by a group that was influenced by these MIT and other organizations, NSS, or whatever the acronyms are, then you have to develop greater skills to get through that, so that you can start to take a group that's investigating these things into a direction where they won't be run off the road, and they will uncover the evidence. And as the evidence is uncovered, you start to organically live in balance so that you can make the society as a whole in balance. My feeling is all of this is a symptom of too much capital in the hands of too few people. And as a result of too much capital in the hands of too few people, you have a blood economy, and that's what Louis Kelso talked about. So that you start having this stampede towards investments in all kinds of weapons. And again, that's what AlQyeda is going to be handing out through his artwork. He's going to be showing where we're at because of this. And then also a big industry is with the prisons. So that means you've got an industry that's going to be fueled by making people wrong. You're going to need to, for the sake of meeting the bottom line and to have all that growth that seems to be necessary, you have to make sure you've got a market. And the market is prisoners. So that means you need criminals. So you're setting into place in society a criminal society. So this can be looked at economically, and that's why the really bright point in my life right now is binary economics. And what I tried to illustrate when I was on Howard Stern was that by making $5 million in the way that I did, I and my partners were an example of capital distribution. And the idea is that if more people had capital distributed, and they didn't acquire it through the earnings of their labor, which they would never achieve, because there's so much wealth now in capital, you can't begin to touch it with wages, and you notice that wages go down lower and lower. So now we have to go into the area of, to get something, you have to give something. So what does the poorer person give? By developing connections of empathy, you have to do self-empathy first. So for an artist to say we all did 9/11, that's quite a jump. And the art and the skill is in taking people to a level where they can actually comprehend that. What I'm going to do is switch this right now to my little cats that are sleeping there on the bed. Yeah, there's one moving. And these are calico cats. Calico cats are usually females. And I want to say that when I was in India during Eid, which is considered one of the most holy days for the Muslims, it harkens back, and it's remembering the time when Abraham sacrificed his son. He took his son up the mountain and was intending to sacrifice him. At this time in the religious area with the Dargah, which is where the holy people are placed, they had the rams being sacrificed, and the rams are usually male, but I guess they had female ones because there was one man with a calico goat, and he was looking so lovingly at this goat. It was one of the most touching moments. And I knew from what was going on around me, I mean, there was blood everywhere, that this goat was going to be sacrificed. So there's a person who clearly is giving up something that he is very attached to because of a faith that he has in God, in Allah. Now, the problem of those who say that, oh, all this is baloney and it shouldn't be done and it's barbaric, people like Nico Haupt will say upon his investigation of how all of these groups seems to be controlled by organizations with great psychological understanding about predicting how people will behave. If you stay in a limited hangout place, the knowledge is co-opted and your sacrifice is to no avail. But if you start to question what you are doing and why, and you can keep your questioning going and keep staying balanced and keep staying in connection with everyone else while you're doing this investigation, then you can emerge with more knowledge that will be more valuable and more helpful to the entire society around you, even the society that's ridiculing you while you're going this path, while you're going down this path. So the person who sacrificed his goat, his calico, beautiful goat, if he's doing it in a heartfelt way, he won't be affected by the co-opting of groups above him. And certainly a lot of the Islamic religion has been co-opted. But I don't think that much of it. The people who join up with these fanatic groups are definitely socially engineered. But to find out who is holding the strings above them is, it takes careful investigation. The quick way to solve it is to just say, well, they're part of the enemy religion, and you scapegoat the entire religion. And this is something that was done in World War II with the Jews, and this is something I think every American now should be aware of, that's going on right now in the case of Islam. So I want to now see if I can read a letter from Nico Haupt to Webster Tarpley, because Webster wanted me to talk about the sex scandals around Obama. And I was saying, well, what difference does it make if Obama's gay or if he's got this, these allegiances, these sexual allegiances with that pastor that was ranting and raving. And Webster said that the reason that it's of concern is that these people are blackmailable, that the public doesn't want to hear anything about homosexuality, and so you're going to ruin someone's career, and therefore you can get them to do whatever you want. And here was something very heartfelt from Nico, which I want you to see. And here's the email. Because I told Webster, I said, I really don't want to be going back onto the Howard Stern show the way I did before. I think once is enough. I think Nico Haupt has been launched as Nico Hitler on his own. I think he's very successful with his comedy act. I think he can hook the attention of a lot of people, and hopefully they can stick beyond the comedy and see the seriousness behind it. And since Nico Haupt was a reason Webster said that I had gone down an unacceptable path, this was a bit of a hard pill for Webster to swallow. He said, can you just take the information and give it to Howard anyway, and don't even say that I gave it? But that's not good enough for me. So what Nico said, and I said, maybe this will be something that Nico wants to do, because Webster, a long time ago, when everyone was saying Nico was crazy, Webster said Nico was a very good researcher. So I thought maybe Nico can have the challenge of the responsibility of developing a show in a thoughtful way. And if it's important to know about Obama's homosexuality, then let Nico deal with it. It's not my interest. So here's what Nico writes to Webster. Webster, your so-called real world still does exclude my research on Goldman Sachs, the SCO, I think that's the Shanghai Corporation overseas or something, Future Combat System, Krauss, Malfe, Wegman, Boeing, directed energy weapons, and the DJ culture of 9/11 video mashups, including 9/11 TV fakery evidence, reaching out also to the art world, bionic creationism, and DJ culture. You're from yesterday, still LaRouche and selling out to a war criminal syndicate around Alex Jones, David Ray Griffin, Stephen Los Alamos Jones, Richard Bechtel Gage and Company. Wake up before it's too late. Transgression comedy on abusive attitude from you and related ilk. And he said he was getting a little tired by the time he got to that last sentence. But the point is, I'm now going to post this, and this is my comment on wanting me to come back to Howard Stern. I have another idea. I will do a show on Howard Stern, but I'd like it to be about the Holocaust and sexual abuse. So there you go. That's the stream. This is Paula Gloria. Over and out.